Good morning. I'm Judy Terzotis, President and Publisher of the Times-Picayune, The Advocate, and the Acadiana Advocate. And welcome to the Fall Economic Outlook series. Everywhere you go, it seems people are talking about the economy and how it's impacting their daily lives. Today's panel will cover those topics that are front of mind for all of us as we look forward to the holiday season and 2023. Thank you for watching.
Good morning. I'm Kristin Askelson, Managing Editor of the Acadiana Advocate. I'd like to welcome you all to our Fall Economic Outlook Summit. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, AARP, for making this event possible, and we'll be showing a short video from them now.
AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. We work to strengthen communities and advocate for what matters most to families, with a focus on health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. Here in Louisiana, we know inflation and the rising cost of insurance, electricity, and gas have hit your pocketbook hard. That's why we're pleased to sponsor today's Economic Summit with The Advocate. Having information about the current economic climate and what's to come is important for families and businesses to protect their finances and plan for the future. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion and connect with us online at aarp.org for more ways to protect your money.
Okay, so before introducing today's panelists, I'd like to bring on my colleague and co-moderator, Adam Daigle. Adam is our business editor at the Acadiana Advocate, and he greets about 15,000 of you every weekday morning as he curates the Acadiana Advocate's business newsletter. You can sign up for that by going to theadvocate.com, then selecting Acadiana, then Acadiana Business. Adam and I are going to be your hosts for about the next hour. We're going to start with a short presentation on businesses and economic activity in the area, and then we'll switch gears to our panel discussion portion of the program, where we'll discuss with our panelists what they're seeing and where we go from here, and we'll get them to answer some questions that we've also gotten from the public. So first up is Gary Wagner, a professor of economics at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, whose role includes providing research, forecasting, and outlook reporting on the regional economy. He's going to give us a snapshot of economic activity so far this year in Acadiana. We've tapped Gary in the past because he's really good at taking a lot of very dense economic data and presenting it in a way that's easy to understand and relevant. So Gary, if you're ready, you can go ahead and take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Kristin. I also want to thank you and Adam for hosting the event and for inviting me to participate. So what I wanted to do is to talk a little bit about the regional economy, talk about some of the national issues, mainly inflation, that I think are on the horizon. And let's see if I can get these slides up. Okay. So for those of you who joined us in the last presentation at the beginning of this year, I talked about the pandemic recession, what it's done to the U.S. economy, also to Lafayette and Louisiana. So this is an update of that figure, which I think is a nice visual representation. So along the left-hand side is the percentage loss in jobs because of the pandemic recession. Across the top is the number of months since February 2020. The dotted black line is the United States, and you can see it's at 0.8%. So this means the U.S. lost about 14% of our jobs during the pandemic recession, mainly in March and April of 2020. We're now 0.8% above that level. So the U.S. has gained back all of the jobs that were lost during that downturn. You can see Louisiana and Lafayette's experience has been a little bit different. So Lafayette lost about 11% of our jobs. Louisiana was about 14%. Lafayette is still about 1.4% below where we were in the last quarter of 2019. So that translates into about 4,000 jobs for our region. Louisiana is about 3% below where it was in the fourth quarter of 2019, which is about 63,000 jobs. So there's still a ways to go statewide, and we still have a ways to go locally as well. However, the Lafayette region is actually performing pretty well compared to the rest of the state. So this is just showing you month-to-month job growth where each year is a different color. But you'll notice the pre-pandemic average for our region is about 180 jobs per month. So on average, we tend to gain on net 180 jobs. You can see in 2021, we were averaging about 480 jobs a month. This year, we're averaging 425 jobs a month, which is double our normal pace. So we're growing quite briskly given the economic headwinds that we're facing right now. We had a really strong number come in August, although I think that number is probably going to be revised down slightly. And I think overall, we're seeing pretty broad growth in the region. The one sector that is slowing, that I'll talk a little bit more about later, is really construction. And I think it's largely due to what we're seeing with interest rates and more of these national headwinds that we're all facing these days. But this is showing you a breakdown of sectors for the state. The Lafayette region is mirroring this almost exactly, and it's showing you where we've been gaining and losing jobs since April 2020, when the pandemic, essentially when the shutdown orders ended. You can see the strongest growth statewide is in business services, up 145%. So that means that sector has gained back all of the jobs that were lost in February and March of 2020, and also has added jobs. That's also been the strongest growing sector in the Lafayette region. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing very strong growth in business services is it's reflecting the diversification of the region's economy over the last, especially 10 years, where we're seeing a pretty significant shift in occupations towards healthcare and healthcare related services. Some of the occupations in particular that we've seen really strong shifts in the last 10 years are in therapists, technicians, and aides. But you'll notice overall in the middle of that graph, it says total non-farm, and that blue bar is 78%. So that means we've gained back on total about 78% of the jobs that were lost in the pandemic. And then we've got 4 different sectors down at the bottom that are in red: wholesale trade, state government, local government, and oil and gas extraction. Those industries in particular have shed jobs since April 2020. So they haven't gained jobs back from the ones that were lost in the pandemic. They've in fact continued to lose jobs. So on net, we still have statewide about 60,000 jobs to go, locally about 4,000 jobs to go. But the big headwinds that we're facing in the national economy are inflation. And I want to talk a little bit about the outlook for the national economy, even though it's a local discussion, because what happens nationally is going to tie into what happens locally. This is showing you the outlook. Those green bars are the Survey of Professional Forecasters outlook for GDP growth nationally for the next 5 quarters. And you can see they range between 1.1 and 1.5%. The reason why this is significant is this number has been revised down by about a percentage point over the last 6 months. So in other words, 6 months ago, forecasters thought growth would be in the 2.5% range. Louisiana and Lafayette tend to grow about 1 percentage point slower than the nation, which means looking forward over the next 5 quarters, we're likely to see growth statewide and in our region that will be flat to perhaps slightly negative to perhaps slightly positive. So I think we're going to be pretty even over the next 12 months. The main culprit is really inflation. And I have this one chart I wanted to illustrate what we're seeing with inflation. So this goes back over the last 10 years. The consumer price index that we hear a lot about is shown in red. What the Federal Reserve tracks is called the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index. That's shown in blue. And then the gold line is what's called the Producer Price Index. So the Federal Reserve has a target inflation rate of 2%. And you can see the CPI year over year is growing about 8.2. The PCE is growing at 6.2, and the Producer Price Index is all the way up at 15.3. So these numbers are basically at or near 40-year highs. So the last time we saw sustained inflation at this pace in the US was in the late 1970s, early 1980s. The reason why it's significant is the Federal Reserve has already started acting to raise interest rates. They're going to continue to do that. As they continue to do that, that's going to continue to slow down the economy, particularly sectors like commercial real estate, residential real estate, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But the numbers here are pretty alarming from a historical standpoint. You'll see the producer prices have actually slowed a little bit in the last couple of months, but consumer prices are still well above historical norms, coming in at 6 and 8%. As I mentioned, also, there was a pretty significant change in the stance of the Federal Reserve over the last year, and I want to try to illustrate what's been happening with this chart. So you'll notice a green dot at the bottom. In December of last year, the Federal Reserve thought interest rates would be 1% at the end of 2022. In March, they said they would be 2% at the end of 2022. In June, they said it would be 3.5% at the end of 2022. And in September, they said it would be 4.5%. So every 3 months, the Federal Reserve releases guidance on where they think interest rates will be. Each of these periods over the last year, they've said, well, interest rates are now going to be higher than we thought. Interest rates are now going to be higher than we thought. Interest rates are going to be higher than we thought, because we have yet to get a handle on inflation. That dotted red line is the current federal funds interest rate, which is around 3%. So based on guidance from the Federal Reserve that was released a couple of weeks ago, there will likely be 1 to 1.5% additional increase in interest rates this year, probably coming in 2 additional meetings of maybe 75 basis points each. So in other words, interest rates have risen pretty sharply. Mortgage rates are now well over 6%. Some places around the country, they've topped 7%. Interest rates are going to go up probably 1% to 1.5% more this year, which is going to slow the economy down even further. As I mentioned earlier, the region has been doing quite well. The one area where I'm starting to see slowing is in construction. Construction in Lafayette has lost jobs in 5 of the last 6 months, and I think it's largely due to what we've been seeing with interest rates. So I think over the next 12 months and probably 24 months, really the story is going to be how quickly can we get inflation under control. So back to you, Kristin.
Thanks, Gary. That inflation graphic is pretty startling. Okay, so you've given us the lay of the land, and it's time to move into the panelist discussion portion of our program. So Adam, would you please go ahead and introduce the rest of our panel?
I can. Good morning, everyone. I enjoy doing these things. This is a good time. I'll first introduce Mr. Bill Bakke. Bill is my super source for all things real estate, and very thorough in all his data. I enjoy working with him. He has been following the market for over 3 decades, and after he retired as CEO of a local real estate brokerage company in 2018, his monthly reports were primarily shared with his agents, a group of bankers, builders, and developers, and of course, us folks in the news media. He left this firm and continued to compile his comprehensive analysis of our residential market and distribute it to a select group of subscribers. He's also kind of known as the guru of real estate among people, and I know one source who said she stopped what she's doing when Bill Stuck gets the email. Bill, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here with everybody.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Miss Mandy Mitchell with the Lafayette Economic Development Authority. She is also one of my top sources, very knowledgeable of what's going on in the area, and always returns a phone call and text, so to that I'm grateful. She as head of the LEDA, she leads the organization's efforts to attract and retain jobs in Lafayette Parish and foster a business climate that is conducive to private investment and development and entrepreneurship. She's from Lafayette. She's got a degree in electrical engineering and an MBA from UNO. She's a graduate of University of Oklahoma's Economic Development Institute and has earned a Certified Economic Developer designation from the International Economic Development Council. I see Mandy everywhere I go almost. She's very quick to credit her staff and others around her. She's very hardworking. Mandy, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Adam and Kristin, and thanks to the Advocate for once again hosting this wonderful discussion. Glad to be here.
Okay, Kristin, I can get the question started. The topic on everyone's mind nowadays, Mr. Bill, is the prices of real estate. Values are skyrocketing. Everyone tells me, "Oh, it's a great time to sell. It's a great time to sell. We'll make a lot. My house is worth so much more." I'm like, well, if you do that, all the money you've made, you're spend it on buying another house because it's going to be way more than it should be. Tell me what's going on with prices in our local market.
Well, thank you, Adam. Actually, that's one of the things that we do see, at least some signs of tempering that's occurring. I'm not ready to capitulate that values are actually going down at this point, but I do believe that the interest rate environment that we're in, which has been tremendously volatile, certainly over the last several months, that is impacting buyers' choices as to what they were going to buy. Obviously, when you have a 2% or 2.5% 30-year mortgage, you can afford to borrow a lot more, i.e., then also to afford a lot more than you would when interest rates are, let's say, 6 to 7%, which is the range that they're in now. I checked with one lender yesterday, and they were quoting 7% interest rates, down from 7.125 just a week before. That 7.125 rate is the highest rate we've had in 20 years. So interest rates are impacting the affordability of buyers. And so as a result, we do see that although the average sales price is still above where it was last year, Adam, you track it through some of my data on a monthly basis, and over the last, say, 3 months in Lafayette Parish, we've had average sales prices in excess of $300,000. In September, the average sales price is $286,500. Okay. So there's been a decline. Is that a decline that's indicative, again, of values actually dropping? At this point, I don't think so, as much as it is that the buyers are looking to somewhat lower what they're purchasing. The number of transactions that we reported through September, although they're down from last year, they're only down cumulatively about 10.3%. Now, in September, they were down 15%. So there is some volume or acceleration that may be occurring in those numbers. But to see our total number of sales through September at only down 10.3%, I will contrast that with Fannie Mae issued a report at the end of August where they upgraded their projected fall in home sales nationally to a decline of 16.2% from previous 15.6% pullback estimation they had forecasted just in July. So where Fannie Mae is projecting from a national standpoint over 16%, we're not near that from an Acadiana standpoint at this point. And I can't see, with only 3 more months left in the year, that ultimately we're going to come anywhere near that. Now, in Lafayette Parish, that decline in cumulative decline in the sales is a little bit higher. It's about 12.4% cumulatively, and it was about 20% down in September. So we're a little bit more affected, if you will, in Lafayette Parish than outside of Lafayette Parish, at least at this point. Outside of Lafayette Parish, actually, we've also seen the amount of sales that are occurring outside of Lafayette Parish growing year to year. So far through September, we're at about 35% of the total sales reported are outside of Lafayette Parish. Last year through September, it was 33.4%. So what does that indicate? Well, it may be an indication of that journey or search for affordability on the part of buyers, where they are now going and looking at properties that are in neighboring parishes to be able to capture that savings. As far as a breakdown in Lafayette Parish, in that September 20% decline, 26% of that decline, or there was a 26% decline in resales. Actually, the sales of new construction were actually up by about 2%. So we still are seeing an interest in new construction sales, and perhaps that's a generational driver. That is, maybe newer is what the generational buyers are looking for, as opposed to existing homes. I don't really have anything but speculation as far as that goes, but clearly the sales of new construction homes are still relatively strong in Lafayette Parish. That being said, we are seeing that, to follow Gary's point, that when we look at new listings coming on the market for Lafayette in new construction and resales, the resale new listings cumulatively are down about 11%, and so are the resales. So there's not there is some constriction to partner with what Gary was saying. There is some sign of constriction as far as new inventory coming on the market. I think the builders kind of expect a slowdown ultimately in this interest rate environment, and that's a product of that.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
Well, I'd just like to jump in and say that I'm doing my part to support our local economy. I closed on a house last Thursday in Lafayette Parish, so I've contributed to that September sales number. I have a question for Mandy. So, we've written a lot about the housing market. That has been a hot topic lately, but another hot topic really since mid-pandemic has been how people are looking at their jobs, right? So nationwide, we saw a lot of people sort of take a step back and reevaluate and maybe quit their jobs or move to something else. So it looks like the state is going to set a new record for the number of people who've quit their jobs. I'm just wondering if you want to weigh in on why you think this is still happening at such a high rate, and maybe what you're seeing locally.
Sure thing. And look, I'd like to say this, that I appreciate the information that Gary shared at the opening segment, which showed that the Lafayette region is outperforming other parts of the state. And I do believe that is in large part due to our intentional focus, economic developers, community leaders, private sector, on diversification 10 plus years ago. And so, and also creativity among our oil and gas support services companies that are here, that remain here, in becoming more efficient, teaming up and doing work and doing projects outside of the state, and now engaging with LEDA and UL on this discussion and exploration of opportunities in the renewable energy space. How can we leverage our existing knowledge and expertise in oil and gas and pivot and expand those portfolios to participate in the renewable energy industry opportunities? So, we are trying to be at the forefront of these things so that we can continue having our strong economy locally. Now, you talked about, your question is about the Great Resignation, quiet quitting. Another term that I've been hearing lately is the big quit. But you're right, Kristin, the pandemic caused a seismic shift in the way people look at work. It caused people to reassess their decisions about life, about work-life balance. And then, unfortunately, for some people, the pandemic left some members of our community and society globally, really, without choices, without options. There are a number of reasons for the situation we find ourselves in, where there are greater positions available than there are people filling those positions and looking to fill those positions. And I will say this, that it is not just happening in Louisiana, it is a global and federal issue. It's affecting the state, and of course, it's also affecting some of our employers locally. So I just was looking at some information from surveys done by McKinsey, by Pew, and also by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And 40% of people in 6 major countries, major economies, are considering leaving their jobs. And it is not just about pay or remuneration. It is people retiring early, making those decisions. It is folks leaving the workplace or having been forced to leave for family care, either child care or caring for elderly parents. And as you can imagine, that has disproportionately affected women. There are 2 million less women in the workplace today in the US than there were pre-pandemic. And it's all driven by family care. Some of the other studies show, when we talk to and survey younger professionals or younger working age individuals, it's lower pay causing them to leave those jobs. It is limited prospects for upward mobility in those positions. It is lack of flexibility. It is rethinking life balance. So it is truly all of the above. It is a complex situation, and it has economists and economic developers, workforce development experts, really befuddled and hoping, and employers hoping that this will settle sometime soon. There is no projection on when this churn may return to some level of normalcy. So in Lafayette, we have about 7,200 people who are unemployed, meaning either not working, but actually meaning not working and actively looking for work, and about 13,700 positions available. And we see the same gap at the state level, or actually it's even more acute at the state level, but it is affecting economies across the globe. Unfortunately, economists are saying it's not going away anytime soon. And again, we have the pandemic, the effects of the pandemic to blame for this unprecedented churn. And it's causing employers to do things like offer higher pay, offer bonus pay or perks, offer greater flexibility in work schedules, offer greater flexibility for childcare and elderly family care, offer perks that relate to better work-life balance, making the workplace more inviting and more suitable and comfortable, offering remote work. That's a whole other conversation. And so there's a lot going on there, but I will say, Gary may have touched upon this, our labor force participation rate in Lafayette is about 86, 87%, which is higher than it is at the state level. And at the national level, that labor force participation rate is about 62%, which is the lowest it's been since the 1970s. And so I'm really, pleased to see our performance of our workforce and our engagement of the workforce here in Lafayette, but not understating some of the issues that employers are working and are dealing with. And we're doing what we can at LEDA and other workforce development partners to match people up to job opportunities that are available that match their skill sets, holding a number of job fairs, working with employers to be creative about finding talent. And then a couple of things we'll be working on next year or really ramping up our talent attraction efforts, not just for homegrown talent that we want to keep here, our UL and SLCC grads, and even our high school grads from LPSS that could very well go straight into the workforce, into gainful employment, but also trying to attract new individuals to move into this community and hopefully buy one of those fancy houses that Bill was talking about in Lafayette Parish, please. And so we're going to be doing a lot of efforts to try and help employers address this issue that is likely not going away anytime soon.
Thanks, Mandy. Next one's for you, Gary. I got to admit you answered most of my questions in your presentation, but we'll try this one. We've talked about, a lot of people talk about diversification of jobs in the industries here, a lot of gains in jobs in eds and meds and other industries, and we're losing oil and gas, which has historically been very significant to this area. I guess, tell me what's it going to look like the next year, especially in that oil and gas industry. What do you see happening in those areas?
So I don't see a lot of momentum on the horizon for a big turnaround in oil and gas in the next 12 months, statewide or locally. In fact, if you look at the Shreveport area, they've actually had some significant slowdowns in drilling activity up there. So I don't really see much turning us around. I think the biggest driver for the Lafayette region moving forward is likely to continue to be healthcare. Something that I started to talk about today, but decided not to dig into the details. I started looking at occupational growth in the region over the last 10 years, which is a new way to slice the data, so to speak. And I was really surprised at how concentrated the growth in healthcare has been. It's even more pronounced than I was thinking, because if you think about technology related jobs, we tend to think of a particular sector, but somebody with tech skills can work in a variety of sectors. And so what we're really seeing is what I would call skill-based clusters versus knowledge-based clusters, where historically the Lafayette region was very heavy in these skill-based clusters, manufacturing related, oil and gas. And we're seeing a tremendous transition to these knowledge-based clusters. And it's moving very quickly. In fact, over the last 10 years, it was very rapid in some of the numbers that I was looking at. So I think moving forward, we're going to continue to see these knowledge-based clusters really be key drivers of the region.
Thanks, Gary. Hey, Bill, I want to, as real estate has been on my mind a lot lately, I'd like to go back to that for a second and just talk about this homeowners insurance crisis that we're facing. And I know that has to be affecting the decisions people are making. And I'm wondering what you're hearing on your end, what we might be able to look forward to.
Well, particularly what I'm hearing about is concern on the flood insurance side, where the new pricing mechanism that's been instituted is resulting in rates that are rising astronomically, so much so that the federal government, FEMA, or that controls this, has basically put a cap of 18% per year on the amount that an increase can incur for existing homeowners, 18% per year. that is not a cap that is applicable to person who buys a policy, initially buys it. So what we're seeing is some real concern about how the cost of ownership is going to be impacted in the future, especially for anyone who owns property south of I-10. Lafayette certainly is included in that, but it is going to be a major issue into the future. Now, on the the homeowner side, there's a lot of talk right now because of the concern about what's going to happen in Florida and what has happened in Florida. We have not, although we have seen some insurance companies folding up and leaving the state. I don't think we are at a point that it is as big a crisis as it is for Florida right now. But certainly the flood insurance is a major.
Right. And it may be early, but I'm going to knock on some wood that, we haven't had a hurricane this year in Louisiana. So hopefully that will help.
Mandy, I'll give you the next question. We reported when you all issued the North Lafayette report and what you all's plans to kind of give that place a shot in the arm, I guess. Can you tell me what the feedback has been since then? And to tag on that, y'all mentioned a lot of activity, a lot of prospects, I guess, at the I-10 Louisiana Avenue intersection. What does that area have? What potential does that area have?
Yes, thank you for that question, Adam. We are at LEDA really broadening our focus into a number of areas, including a targeted effort to uplift North Lafayette. North Lafayette is the entryway, the gateway into our community. Oftentimes, visitors coming in, it's the first area they encounter. People coming to drop their kids off to school at UL. First area they encounter. And so we need all aspects, all parts, all geographic areas of the community firing on all cylinders. And so the response to our North Lafayette revitalization recommendations has been hugely positive. We intend to join forces with a number of different organizations, government and private and quasi-public entities, to double up on efforts to support things like small business and entrepreneurship development, minority business development, boost educational attainment, enhance our workforce development efforts to reach further back into the school system, to expose the students and their parents and the high school counselors and the leaders of career and tech ed to as many opportunities as possible for the students, whether they're completing with a high school diploma or GED and want to go right into the workforce, whether they want to go on to get a skill or trade, or go on to four-year institution here at UL, our R1 designated institution that is really just knocking it out of the park at producing that knowledge-based economy that Gary was just talking about. We are reaching back. We are being more creative about how an economic development org can engage and help influence and those outcomes for the good, for a positive impact. We are also continuing bread and butter economic development, right? So business attraction, our business retention and expansion, and workforce development. We are as focused in North Lafayette as we are in any other parts of the parish. And by the way, we are also expanding our focus and support with each of our municipalities on their focus areas and strategic areas for growth. Doosan may have a different focus and strategy than Youngsville and Karen Crow and Broussard and Scott. And so we are working with each of those mayors to leverage and what we bring to the table to support their growth areas. But getting back to North Lafayette, we're also looking at increased interest in the area. You mentioned I-10 and Louisiana Avenue. We have the Aldi that will be opening soon, bringing additional grocery opportunities for people in the area. And we have some other interest north of I-10 in that area at where the green spaces are. I can't go into further detail at this point in time, but we're also hearing some interest in the University Avenue corridor as well, if you will, with LCG having received a $16 million build grant in order to enhance the roadway, that corridor at University Avenue, and do streetscaping with the Truman Elementary coming at the corner of Willow and University Avenue, and other interest beginning to pick up in that corridor. My hope for that area is that we can energize the area as much as, for example, LSU is doing and has done with the Nicholson corridor off of the Interstate 10 exit there. So this corridor leading to UL, ultimately, we hope to see so much more activity there. And I'm already starting to feel the energy. And that's going to marry up with the Four Corners, the project at Four Corners with the Bottle Art Lofts, for example. Also in that area, Ash Industries recently announced an expansion, more than doubling their employment opportunities. We have Westfield Hydraulics in Lita's North Industrial Park. They will be coming online in early 2023. That's a company we brought to this area from California. School Mint is well on the way to locating in their downtown facility. That's additional jobs coming to the northern part of the parish. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of buzz, a lot of interest. And what LITA is doing is serving as a catalyst to keep this momentum going. But again, it's going to take a team effort, but it's going to take a focus on multiple fronts: educational attainment, small and minority business development, which we are ramping up our programming in that regard tremendously. We officially announced our partnership with the UL Lead Center to continue and grow the Accelerate Northside program, which will expand not only to focus on just general businesses in the area or aspiring business owners, but we'll have programming focused on female entrepreneurs, and then program focusing on a mentoring program, taking the alum from the early cohorts and then making sure that their businesses are now getting to that next level through mentorship with seasoned, mature business owners. And so, the built environment is something else too. We're supporting, partnering with other organizations like the Evangeline Thruway Redevelopment Team, and thinking about what could be along the future I-49 connector along the boulevard portion. What could be there? What are the possibilities? And so we are very focused on helping North Lafayette, part of the community where I reside and where I'm from, to grow from within. And, I always say this, and I really mean it: we're only as strong as our weakest link. And so we really have to double up our efforts in helping that part of the community to grow. And then I want to just shout out to Amazon, that particular company. When we signed on with them and they agreed to come to our community and provide jobs for people in North and Upper Lafayette, they committed to 500 jobs. They have now tripled the amount of people physically employed and working at that facility. And the list will continue to grow. I'm very bullish on North Lafayette and hope to continue bringing more partners to the table to see to it that the economy there is re-energized, and that people that are from there have the ability to take part in that growth.
Thanks, Mandy. I wanted to follow up on something on the jobs question. And maybe Gary, you can weigh in on this. So a couple weeks ago, we were on a leadership exchange trip to Pensacola, and someone mentioned that at some point, half of all white-collar jobs in the United States can be done remotely. So I want to ask you about that, what you're seeing across the United States, and when it comes to attracting people to Acadiana, does this give us a real opportunity?
I do think that gives us an opportunity, and I do think that as jobs change, you're going to see a greater percentage of those being remote. I think the question is whether or not some of those positions are going to be full-time remote, where some still are, or we're going to transition back to a partial in the office kind of work environment. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that yet. But I do think the idea of remote work is a tremendous opportunity for our region for a couple of different reasons. One, I think, we've got great connectivity with LUS fiber. I think you also have a great area to live. So when you look at where just people are moving, they're moving from the industrial Midwest to the Southeast and to the South. 20 years ago, a lot of those folks were moving to the Southwest. Now they're starting to move a little bit more east. And I think that gives us a real opportunity to capitalize on people that may be interested in living in a certain geographic place.
And if I may, yes, I love this question because it's something that I have teamed up with Lafayette Convention and Visitors Commission and One Acadiana on a concerted effort to market Lafayette, Louisiana to talented individuals across the country. When we travel, I know that each of us on this panel today, when we travel and tell people we're from Louisiana, oftentimes their rebuttal is, I've been to New Orleans, it's great. There's more to Louisiana than New Orleans. No offense, because it's where I got my undergraduate education and started my professional life. But there's more to Louisiana than New Orleans. And we are determined to make sure that the rest of the country, these talented individuals that are mobile, yet again, an offshoot of the pandemic, more people are mobile and can work from anywhere, and they are making those decisions. I was reading a survey. I just returned from an economic development conference, and this was a hot topic, this fierce competition for talent attraction. And one study showed that one of the leading causes for people leaving their job is wanting to choose where they want to live. And particularly that bubbled up as one of the reasons among young professionals, wanting to live in a place that offers a great quality of life. And so when it comes to culture, when it comes to the innovative ecosystem, when it comes to diversity, Lafayette offers probably one of the best opportunities when it comes to relative affordability for young professionals, a place to raise a young family, outdoor recreation. And so we are curating a set of themes and stories that we will tell the rest of the world about Lafayette, Louisiana, so that we can get into the mix and get into the conversation of these young, professional, talented individuals that are picking up and they're taking their laptops and they're going to find somewhere where there's great broadband internet connectivity and a great quality of life and a relatively low cost of living. And we want to make sure Lafayette enters into that conversation.
Thanks, Mandy. Yeah, that was the topic in Pensacola. Like, there were tales of people who graduated and move to Pensacola without a job, without a job in their field, just so like, well, one day I'll get a job here and then I'll be here. So it's totally different from my perspective at that age.
You can go to Pensacola and find bartenders with master's degrees.
Yes, that's exactly what they said. My last questions for you, Bill. It's always a topic of discussion. Everybody wants to know where they're building houses at, and you give the data quarterly, kind of break up into zones. Youngsville is still up there. Everyone's building and moving to Youngsville, but I see the numbers in the southwest corner of the parish toward Maurice trickling up. Can you tell me kind of what's going on in that little corner of the parish?
Yeah, what we're seeing, particularly in Vermilion Parish, especially, a significant amount of new construction development there. Just to give you a contrast, so far this year through September in Vermilion Parish, 111 new construction sales. Last year there were 65, so that's a 70% increase in sales of new construction there. So what we're seeing is not that there's a major transition out of Lafayette Parish, but as far as new construction sales are concerned, in 2021, about 14% of the new construction sales were outside of Lafayette Parish. In 2022, it's 219. That's about a 55% increase. So there's no question. Now, that being said, still about 80% of all the new construction sales are in Lafayette Parish. But what I am seeing and what we are seeing is certainly a robust growth that's occurring in the Scott-Dusson area, in St. Landry Parish, even in Acadia Parish, and particularly Vermilion Parish, as far as new construction is concerned. And, as far as the good news, we talked about, oh my goodness, interest rates have gone up, and that's put a crimp on buyers' affordability. But one thing that has happened that is positive is you're not hearing anymore this year about, oh, I just listed this house and we had 15 people making an offer on it and we sold the house for $25,000 more than it was listed. That's not happening anymore. Well, it's not happening to the degree that it is happening. It did happen. And part of the reason for that is even though overall new listings of property has dropped relative to last year, because of the drop in demand, what is on the market, the existing inventory, has increased. So I'm just going to give you, for example, Lafayette Parish. Let's see. Last year at this time, there were 535 active listings on the market in all price ranges in Lafayette. This year, there are about 740. So what we've gone from is a 1.3 month supply of product to a 2 month supply. Now, that might not seem like much, but that is widening choices for buyers, which is a good thing. But that 2 month supply is still way, way below the 6 month equilibrium that you normally look for. And so I think the sellers or people who own property in Lafayette still have some protection against an oversupply of product suddenly crashing the values of real estate in our area. And so I think overall what we're experiencing is a good thing right now for both buyers and sellers relative to expanding inventory to kind of offset that lack of availability that they had even when interest rates were significantly lower.
Okay, you're making me feel a little better as I bought a home inside Lafayette Parish, inside the city. One of those lucky people who found an affordable home inside Lafayette. So we promised to only keep you guys for an hour, and we're closing in on that time. So what I'd like to do is give each of our panelists an opportunity to take just a couple minutes to give us some final thoughts and maybe look ahead. We will be having another Economic Outlook Summit early in 2023, but maybe take a look at early 2023 and let us know what you're seeing in the near future. So we've already got you up, Bill. Do you want to start with that, and then maybe we'll go to Mandy and then close with Gary?
Well, the last thing, and I'll just briefly, let's touch on interest rates. And there was a recent study done by Redfin, a national real estate company, and I'll just share it with you. It says the typical house owner who started searching in July and closed a deal on a new home in September saw their potential mortgage rate fluctuate by roughly 0.5 percentage point every 4 weeks, according to that report. And they say that's the most volatile 3-month period since 1987, when mortgage rates swung wildly after they had surged to nearly 19%, and the Fed was aggressively moving to quell severe inflation. So I think one of the things that if there's a short-term problem, if you will, or challenge within the marketplace, is the erratic movement of interest rates. What we're all hoping for, although the expectation is they're going to gradually go up for the rest of this year, we might see interest rates at the end of 2022 in the 7.5%, maybe 7.75%, God forbid, 8%. The reality, I think what we really need is stability, some period of stability. And I think that's what we're all hoping for, and probably no one more than Jerome Powell at the Fed.
Okay, you want me to just jump in?
Yeah, just go ahead and just share your final thoughts with us.
Okay, well, once again, thank y'all for hosting the Economic Outlook this morning. I continue to be bullish on Lafayette and our growth prospects, and I'm talking about the entire parish, every municipality, and every geographic region of the parish. And I'm encouraged by the data that Gary shared this morning. I will also point to let's keep our eyes on downtown. Anita Begno and her team are continuing to work very hard to grow businesses and residential units in the downtown area, and it's going to take both. We're excited about when Acadiana moving their offices downtown. The Opportunity Machine is thriving downtown. Other businesses continue to be attracted to that part of the community. So I want to definitely keep our eyes on that. And then just parish-wide, we're seeing an uptick in interest in Lafayette from businesses across the spectrum, and including family entertainment. We have, I believe, in the next couple months, some exciting announcements we'll be able to make in that regard, as well as some other industry sectors that we're targeting for Lafayette for growth. Healthcare among them, the energy industry among them, and technology as well. In addition to that, I'd just like to encourage everyone who's watching, be positive on Lafayette. When you're talking to family members who aren't from here, strangers you may meet while you're traveling, business owners, speak positively about the community. Let's talk about all that we have going for us and the direction we're headed in. It carries a lot of weight in the outcome and the future of our parish and our community.
Yeah, so Mandy hit a lot of the great details, so I can give you a 30,000-foot overview here. I think, given the interest rate environment nationally, I think economic conditions are going to slow in the region in the second half of this year and into 2023. I think growth is still going to be positive here, and I think we're going to continue to outpace the state and be one of the strongest performing regions in the state of Louisiana.
Thanks, Gary. 5950. You took us home and right on time. So I would just like to once again thank all of our panelists for spending time with us this morning. This is such an important topic, and I know it's from inflation to housing prices to unemployment. There has been a lot of instability starting in 2020 with the pandemic. And so this is something a lot of people really care about, and it affects their lives. So I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with our audience. I'd like to once again thank our sponsor, AARP, for making this possible. And for anyone who would like to share this discussion, the video will live at theadvocate.com. And I look forward to having another robust discussion in a few months as we kick off 2023. So thank you all again.
Thank you all.